Many new cards have just been added to the B.A.R, and I've created a tier list for all the restricted cards we have so far. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the BattleCast. In today's video, I'm going to go over the most recent additions to the B.A.R list, as well as kind of go through a tier list that I created, ranking, what are the best restricted cards and what are the worst restricted cards. Now, as you can see here, I obviously am not using my green screen. I figured, you know what, I got a new shelf, I just tidied up, I've got all my nice Warhammer Underworld figures here, so let's just take it easy and this will kind of be a discussion video. So without further ado, let's go through the changes to the B.A.R list. So I don't think anybody was confused about the power level that Power Unbound brought to this game. In fact, it was the strongest expansion we've ever seen. In the most recent tournaments at like Warhammer Fest, decks were running 5 cards from Power Unbound, and that's a lot. I mean, when your deck only consists of like 30 something cards, having such a huge amount come from one single expansion, I mean, it just attests to how significant these cards were in Warhammer Underworlds. So this B.A.R list came out pretty quickly, actually, and I think it just confirms that these cards were strong. So for universal objectives, the first one added is Burst of Speed, and this only makes sense. I think a lot of these cards didn't get added to the B.A.R right away because, I don't know, it looks kind of tacky, I think, if you release a card and it's immediately added to the B.A.R list. I guess there should be some sort of grace period where it gets to run rampant. It's funny that none of the decks at like any of the tournaments, like all of them are no longer good because of how significant these changes are. Burst of Speed, totally agree with. I still think Molag would consider running Burst of Speed and Longstrider. I mean, he has such natural raw power. He can kind of afford to put this kind of tech in his deck. Warning Shot being added, I do think we're sort of seeing ranged combat take a hit here, which is good, I think. I think ranged combat is sort of unhealthy for the game. Defensive Steelheart and Cataphragm Relics were unhealthy for the game because it was non-interactive. Ranged combat is somewhere in the middle. It's less interactive than melee, but it's not quite as much as, like Loner and Cataphragm Relics. So I understand they're hitting it, and I think this is probably a good choice. I'm not sure if I think Warning Shot is good enough to see a ton of play now that it is restricted. When it wasn't restricted, throw that in for sure. So yeah, we'll see. It's a pretty good card though. Next, Acolyte of the Cataphragms making restricted. This doesn't really matter too much. I mean, the bottom line is that if you're playing a Cataphragm tome deck, guess what? You're picking this card. So, you needed it anyway. It's not something you just kind of throw in. So I don't think this really affects them too much. I guess it takes away one of their restricted slots. So it seems reasonable. Calculated Risk. We knew this was going to make it. I'm shocked it didn't make it sooner. This was the escalation of Night Vault. This puppy came out and everybody and their dog was running it. It completely changed the meta of Night Vault, or at least for boards. I mean, we've never seen lethal hexes come into such a significant play like we have with Calculated Risk. I do think it will still be run, of course, but certainly probably not as much as it was. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 100% prior to this B.A.R, so that seems reasonable to me. And lastly, we have Sorceress Scouring. With Power Unbound, we did see a Sorceress Scouring come in, so there were 2 that did the same thing. Well, now at least one of them is restricted, and you'll have to pay for it if you want to run both of them. It's sort of a Burst of Speed Longstrider scenario. Hell, I mean, we might even see the other one make it, because cards like Precise Use of Force, Advancing Strike, all of those are on the B.A.R, and there's no real difference between Sorceress Scouring and, the other one. So maybe it'll just come in the next patch, who knows, but this is a good thing. At least one of them's off. Now for the Universal Gambits, similar to ranged combat, spells have taken a hit. We saw last designer commentary that you need line of sight if you want to cast spells, which was that hurt a lot. In fact, in recent games, I have been hiding behind blocked hexes from spells. It does work quite well. So Sorcerer's Flourish is the ploy reaction where you add a point of damage. It's almost like a twist the knife for your spells, and that made it on. I think if you're going totally spell heavy, you're probably still going to take this card. The next universal gambit we saw is Upper Hand, and this card was way strong, way strong. I think the ruling is going to stand, or at least the general understanding that blanks, 0/0 is a tie. And if that is the case, which I do think it is, this card's really strong. I have personally played this card many times to devastating effect. It's like, I don't know, having it in your hand is so nice because you go in and you roll your dice and you fail and you're winning. It's such a good card. Totally makes sense to be on here. I think it'll still see lots of play. I think it's very good. The last one is the Sphere of Akshi, and this makes sense. This is a range 4, deal a damage on a lightning. I mean, this is almost the most surefire 1 damage spell in the game, and certainly one of the most surefire deal 1 damage ploys in the game, or gambit card in general, and I think it makes sense that it's on here. It is super good. And lastly, we see a couple upgrades make the list. Spirit Bond. Strongest upgrade in the game by a huge margin. This thing is wild. So strong, in fact, that if somebody spirit bonded one of their fighters, I might kill that fighter to get rid of spirit bond. I mean, it's so good. So this makes nothing but sense to me. Archer's Focus making the list. It's kind of ties into our next one, but this is supporting ranged combat, and therefore ranged combat is suffering here. This is a great card. If you were running a ranged warband, you probably took this guy. Now I'm not too sure. And the next card is Well of Power, which super strong. I mean, this is probably the top tier spell casting thing in the whole game. An extra dice on all your spell attack actions, all your spell casts. This is a meta defining card for that playstyle. You're running a spell deck, Well of Power. So it makes sense to me that this guy made the list. It'll be taken, but it's not so much, will it be taken? It will. It's more kind of tailoring back the other choices they have throughout their restricted list. I do not disagree with a single card on this list. Totally well done. They're listening. This is good. The B.A.R. list getting big, though. It is getting big. Let me know what you guys think. Are you happy about this list? Yeah, let me know. So now we're going to go on to the B.A.R. list the tier list for the B.A.R. list that I created. And I kind of have this, at least what I think, is a fairly sexy image of these lists. So the way I broke up this list is, obviously S, A, B, C, D. So the S tier is something that you pretty much always take. Everybody and their dog takes these cards. You might not in some, but oh my gosh, almost every time take it. The A tier is the playstyle defining cards. Things that you need them if you're playing this, and that's why they're so valuable. The B tier are very good cards. And I'm not saying, B tier sounds bad, but no, B tier is very good. These cards are great. The C tier are cards that a specific play style might lean towards, but they're certainly not, applicable to everyone. And the D tier is hey man, if you want to have some fun and run something crazy, maybe you'll pick the D tier. So let's go through the S. Escalation, Ready for Action, Spirit Bond. Everybody's got Ready for Action. I mean, for sure. Escalation, lots of people love that. It is a huge comeback mechanic, right? Buddy plays 2 upgrades, you play 1, now you've got 2 glory to work with. It's a big deal. And Spirit Bond, oh my man, this card's so good for so many warbands. It just, the fact that it's offense and defense can't be overstated. It's so good. So next we're on to the A tier, which is the play style defining cards. Superior Tactician, I don't think it's going to surprise anybody. This guy supports the score immediately play style. You need this card. There are now, lots of people are running cards like Combination Strike and Victory After Victory, and maybe those can supplement the Superior Tactician, because there are so many score immediatelys. Like if you've got 8 score immediatelys, you can probably score both of those cards and not need this. But Superior Tactician is still, man, it's a good card if you can, fit it in your deck. Next we have Well of Power, which, as I kind of talked about previously, this is, if you're running a spellcasting deck, you need this card. It would be crazy not to run this card. It's so good. It's like permanently adding an attack dice to an attack action. That would be a really good card for melee. This is happening for spell, so super solid. Next we have Tome of Offerings. I mean, if you're relying on kills, if you're Magor's Fiends, this card is so important for you. Even spell attack warbands really want this card because their spells are cast by a fighter and therefore they benefit from Tome of Offerings. Super good. Now the Acolyte of the Cataphan, is it really an A tier card? Perhaps, but the point is that if you want to run the tomes, you need the card. And therefore it is, it's a gameplay defining one. And we saw Molag do really good recently running an Acolyte of the Cataphan deck. So there you go. And again, I got Longstrider and Burst of Speed in here. I don't know if they're A tier for everyone, but Molag is taking these cards and he's going to do good. So I kind of put asterisks beside these two and the tome Acolyte of the Cataphan, but for certain people, it is their playstyle. It is what they're about. So next we're moving on to the B tier, which is very good cards. Now for the objectives, there's 3 of them straight up, and all of these fall into the same category, which is like the easiest objectives to score in the game ever, universally. I mean, Fired Up, it's like, oh man, it's so easy. Calculated Risk, so easy. And Change of Tactics, the OG easiest to score, You're spending 2 activations to get a glory, but, the charge aspect, why not? You might kill someone too. So Change of Tactic, those are the OG easy to score, and that's why they're so valuable. Lots of warbands run Fired Up and Calculated Risk. You just want that glory. Sorceress Scouring, I'm kind of jumping down to the other objective there. It's good. If you're running a spell kill deck, you're going to take this card. We've got Trap and Pit Trap. These guys are really good cards. They help you get that extra damage in. They do not synergize with Tome of Offerings, which, is a bit of a bummer. But for ranged combat warbands, they're super good. They help you kind of punch through. But what I really like about these cards most of all is they totally negate the Tethered Spirit and Soul Traps and the Last Chances. They help you. It's not an attack action killing them, so the same thing that counteracts Tome of Offerings kind of helps you bypass some of these shiesty shenanigans. Next we have Awakened Weapons and Helpful Whispers. These are great cards. Helpful Whisper is kind of the Soul Bond light. I don't think you would take this if you have Spirit Bond. Some might, like Molag might take it. It's very valuable. And Awakened Weapon is the OG. These guys have been around forever. They are good, but they're getting a little harder to put into decks now that there are so many good options here. I might almost put them in the C tier, but they are fundamentally very strong cards. Next we have Archer's Focus. Great. If you're a ranged warband, if you're spell attack actions, this is a very important card for you. Definitely worth an upgrade slot for sure. And lastly, Upper Hand. I mean, I cannot overstate how strong Upper Hand is. You'll never feel so good about blanking. Seriously. You're like, I rolled all blanks. And you're like, well, he's rolling a dodge. I'm pretty sure he's not going to get it. And he doesn't. And then you add a success. You beat him. It's so good. Upper Hand for the ploy slot is right up there. I mean, again, it's not playstyle defining, so I didn't put it in the A tier, but man, is that a good ploy. Maybe it's S tier? Shit, I mean, maybe it is. It's very good. Now we're moving on to the C tier. This is the more specific cards. So my turn, this really only applies to warbands that can take a hit. So we're talking about the Magors, the Stormcast, the kind of the big boys who can actually live damage. You're not going to take this on Godsworn because you're probably not going to live something that damages you. Molag might use this. So this card it's a good card, but it's a little more specific. Same with Advancing and Defensive Strike. I don't think these cards are going to see play that much. They could even be D tier cards now because, like, why would I take Advancing Strike when I could just take Fired Up or Calculated Risk? You know, like, they're one glory, they're both score immediatelys, and those two require you to kill someone in a specified area. So maybe they are more D tier cards, but I do think that the D tier cards suck. So we've got Deathly Fortitude and Sudden Growth. These are great cards for certain playstyles. You know, if you've got the Tome deck and you're loading up your blue horror, these are really important for that playstyle. But generally, they've seen a fall from grace because of their restriction, and not being able to move is quite debilitating. It was already sort of a trade-off a little bit. Now I think you have to really want them. Twist the Knife, I'm not sure. I don't quite like it as much as Trap and Pit Trap because it's sort of, it can be blocked by Last Chance and Dark Destiny and things like that. So, you know, I would probably take Trap and Pit Trap over it personally. But it's still a very cool card and, you know, sees play occasionally. Illusory Fighter is an amazingly powerful ploy. You know, you teleport someone around the map to a starting hex. They don't get a move token on them. It's a good card. It doesn't see a lot of play, though. But for what it does, it's very unique. No other card does this. We do have the Shadow Step, but you do get the move token. Or you can't do it on someone who has moved. And you do get a move token after, where this does neither. So this is a strong card, but again, it does not see a lot of play. It's probably pretty specific. Precise Use of Force, I mean, this was a really important card in Season 1. It was run all the time. Now it's kind of in the same spot as Defensive Strike, Advancing Strike. Why would you take it over Calculated Risk, Fired Up, Change of Tactics? I'm not totally sure. So it kind of stays in this zone here. If you've got a warband with a lot of varying attacks, you might take this guy. Warning Shot, I would run this 100% of the time if it wasn't on this list. Now, again, with only 5 slots and the ranged combat, you know, they're probably going to take Archer's Focus. So they're a little tight now. It's sort of in the same spot, like Fired Up I'd take over Warning Shot. Probably Change of Tactics. I might still take this guy, though. It's a really good card, especially for, like, Turash and Narvia, who suck. And the last card on this list, we got Sorcerers Flourish. It's, you know, I didn't get a ton of play with this guy when it was unrestricted. I'm not sure exactly how much it comes into play. I think if you can squeeze it in for a spellcasting deck, you know, of course. So that's why it's in this, you know, more specific. Not everyone's going to prioritize this card as highly as others. If you're like an all spell all the time Yulthari deck, you probably want this guy. But yeah, it's pretty niche. And lastly, we are on to the D tier. So my D tier is, I mean, if you want to mix it up or try something crazy, this is the D tier. Alone in the Darkness, you know, maybe I should have put this one higher, but I don't know. I've played in tournaments, and when I see someone score Alone in the Darkness once, they never score it again if I have anything to say about it. And so in that regard, it's more on this list to promote or to counteract non-interactive playstyles. So yeah, I think this belongs here. Soul Trap, Tethered Spirit, they're good. They're 50-50s. Lots of people don't like 50-50s. I don't. They can be bypassed by Trap and Pit Trap or spells. Spells are not attack actions or ploys, so if you die to a spell, you don't get to use this. So they're less relevant now than ever before. So I think they make it in the D tier slot for sure. The Destined to Meet and Slumbering Key, I just think, like, I would way rather take an easy to score objective like Fired Up over a later in the game I might get one if you're still alive. So yeah, they make it. Incredible Strength, getting to that 4 damage mark has never been easier than right now in the game. I mean, with cards like Glory Seeker, Great Strength, Trap, Pit Trap, you know, there's some other things, but it's Inspired Command. You can get there better. You can get there way easier. So I think Incredible Strength, while it is still important, you can probably finesse your deck around it so that you don't need to take up a slot with this one. Shade Glass Dagger and Shade Glass Hammer, I mean, I don't know. I don't even need to talk about them. Earthquake, what was once the kingpin for one expansion cycle, which was then completely erased because of Great Concussion, but that's banned now. It's here, and I've never seen a deck that's run it recently that's done well. I ran it recently. I did not do well, though. So it's here. Yeah. Loner and Perfect Planning are totally on here for the same reason that cards like Alone in the Darkness are on. They're trying to completely shut down that non-interactive playstyle. And yeah, these cards are not good. They're not good. If you want to try Defensive Steelhearts, you could take these or whatever, but I don't know. It's just, they're not that good. So there you have it. That is my tier list for the restricted cards in Warhammer Underworlds. Let me know what you think. I just, I kind of got thinking today, and I was like, I'm just going to make a tier list. Like, it'd be kind of fun. So let me know what you think. I'm super excited about this game. I think that we have seen some really intelligent restricting of cards going into Season 3. So I think the game state's actually in a pretty good spot now that ranged combat has been kind of knocked down a peg or two. And melee combat, whilst of course it's been affected, has not been affected nearly as much as spell and ranged attacks. So relatively speaking, I'd say melee went down a little and ranged came down a lot. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. New videos come out every Friday or Saturday. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like or even subscribing to the channel, or you can leave me a comment in the section below. Until next video, I'll see you then. Thanks.